Today I'd like to continue our discussions about joy from the Book of Joy, featuring reflections from the Dalai Lama and from Bishop Desmond Tutu. One of the things that they mention in the book is the importance of perspective. A lot of times when we're dealing with problems, we're dealing with issues, we don't take into consideration the fact that we bring one perspective to the problem, but there are other perspectives that different people have, and of course, listening to and collaborating with those perspectives enriches our lives and really helps us to lead a life of joy so that we don't get so involved in ourselves, our own issues, our own thoughts, but our vision is expanded and greatly enriched when we discover the insights of others and their wisdom. One of the things that brings this out, that they point out in their dialogue back and forth, is when you look at Earth from a different perspective. And of course, we have one perspective, uh, maybe the perspective of where we live. We look up at the stars, the moon. We're amazed at the beauty of nature that surrounds us. Truly amazing. And that's one perspective. Of course, when we travel to other countries, other lands, we get a different perspective. When we take a cruise, Kathy and I took a cruise to Alaska, get a totally different perspective at the beauty of those mountains and the icebergs, and it's just amazing, the richness of the wildlife. But of course, when you take a look at Earth from the perspective of space, when you travel in a spaceship around the Earth, whether you go to the moon or if you're extremely adventuresome and sign up for a trip to Mars or another planet eventually, you're going to get an entirely different perspective on Earth, where we live, our home. So perspective is something that can change depending on our point of view, depending on the richness of our experiences as well. One of the health researchers who takes a look at the human health and some of the characteristics that are necessary for good health, Larry Sherwitz. Larry's done some research on the issue of health, and he comes up with some interesting conclusions that really sort of astonished me a bit. Uh, those who say I and me have a greater chance of getting a heart attack, and of that heart attack being fatal. This was a better predictor of death than smoking, high cholesterol levels, or high blood pressure. Just those who constantly talk about themselves, the I and me people. Well, I did this, I did, this is about me, and you want to hear my story. Uh, those people that are into themselves, uh, they have a greater potential for a heart attack. Very interesting when you look at it. And again, it's a matter of the question of what perspective they are bringing to life. And the perspective in terms of their um, experience is centered on who they are and their opinions and what they think. Another researcher, Johannes Zimmerman, says that those who use I and me a lot are more likely to be depressed. So, you look at it and you say, well, I want to avoid getting the heart attack. I better not use I and me that much. But then you also look at it from the point of view of, well, if I use this I and me a lot and I'm very self-centered, I'm more likely to get depressed. And that's kind of strange in a way, because you would think the person who uses I and me a lot would be more likely to, you know, be happy about themselves, and they're always talking about themselves and their own accomplishments. and they're probably, in pretty good shape, right? I mean, how could they get depressed? They seem to be elated about themselves and who they are, but Zimmerman found just the opposite, that the I and me people tend more towards depression, which is a very interesting finding. Dalai Lama brings this out in a very humorous story. He talks about a spiritual leader who wanted to be higher than all the others. It's funny, even in the spiritual life and among spiritual leaders, there's this rivalry. Like, well, I have more followers, I have more insights, I've written more, I've published more, all of this stuff, right? And there can be a little spiritual competition going on here, right? So the Dalai Lama talks about this and says, well, this one spiritual leader decided, well, I'm kind of superior to the others. So I'm going to build this little kind of podium there with a lot of bricks on it, and I'm going to stand on it to show my superiority. So the other leaders, they're down on one level, but I'm going to be up on these bricks. I'm going to be at a much higher level because really, with my wisdom, with my learning, with my intense spiritual practices, with my great prayer life, I'm much higher than they are. And the Dalai Lama has fun with that and says, well, that could happen. You could be on that higher level, but, those bricks are under your legs. What if one of those bricks should happen to move? And you come tumbling down, a little Humpty Dumpty action there. So he says, don't be too much about the higher place. Be careful, because you can fall down quite easily. Those bricks, they can be moved. So be careful about taking the higher place. Um, Desmond Tutu responds and he says, a lot of times not only the Buddhist spiritual leaders, but even the Christian spiritual leaders have the same issue. And he talks about a story about humility. The bishop was at an ordination, doing an ordination for priests, and one of the candidates told him, gee, what I'm really looking for, Bishop, is a good book on humility because I'm entering now into service to God, and I want to make sure that I don't have this attitude of superiority. I want to make sure that truly I'm here to be a servant to the people of God. And the bishop looked at him and said, don't worry about it. I've written the best book on the subject. So Bishop Tutu is like, hey, come on, this idea that, we're better than the others, that we are the ones, we are the experts, and the others are not up to the same level as I am. So again, the importance, obviously, of perspective, the importance of not elevating ourselves too much, not thinking so highly of ourselves, the sense of true humility and true service to others is so important in achieving joy and of having the right perspective, which of course is the perspective of our trust in God. And that's not so much about the I and the me, it's about following our God and giving service to our God.